Fourth and Four podcast, sponsored by Inside the Leather Custom Putter Covers. Search Inside the Leather Shop on Etsy and use promo code podcast at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. I'm Donald Lawrence. Our guest today is Brian Ware, who is the defense coordinator at Lubbock Estacado. Welcome to the podcast, Coach.
Man, appreciate you having me on, bro.
This will be a good time, man. So you grew up in Austin. Who introduced you to sports, and what's special about high school football in the capital?
Man, so I come from a sports background. My dad was a college track coach for 20 plus years, was a high school football player, went to college on a football track scholarship. And then, from there decided he wanted to, just stick to the track. But growing up with him and my uncles and my brothers and everybody, sports was always going to be something that I was going to do. Football just kind of ended up being a thing that I was good at. The rest of those guys, my father, my brother, and everybody, they're all skinny greyhounds. They can run for days. And I'm like, I guess I figured out my spot when I figured out I could hit people. So,
When those guys they come to your high school games, the whole family?
Oh yeah, they was there all the time, middle school, high school. I even ran track, so they, it was always a big thing of trying to, kind of uphold the name and just make sure you do your best job you could do.
That's awesome, man. And then from there, it took you to TOU, and that's kind of that's where we met. Yeah. And then after that, your coaching journey started, right? Yeah. So take us through your professional experiences.
So, like you said, just playing ball in Austin, I got a chance I'm on campus one day and this big guy walks in named Bill Shade, and he's saying he's looking for this guy, Brian Ware. And I'm like, you looking right at him, And so he recruits me to Texas Lutheran. I come to TLU. That's where we all meet and play ball there. And so I get an opportunity in the spring of 2008. Yeah. Coach Miller, our coach, had just been, let go. And they bring in this guy by the name of Dennis Parker. And I just walk into his office and say, hey, Coach, I'm interested in getting into coaching. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I just want to help out. And he said, okay, cool. I'll let you, hang around, help out. And that spring, I was assistant defensive line coach, ran all the drills for the D-line coach when he was there, because we had some guys that was transitioning in. So when he wasn't there, I did it for him. And then we get into the summer and we're in a staff meeting and he's like, well, you finished playing fullback here. So we don't have a running backs coach. How about you be the running backs coach? And I'm like, well, I still got a year left in my education or whatever. And, he just gave me that opportunity. He was like, don't treat this as you're a student assistant. This is your position. You're full-time. You're going to be expected to do everything that a full-time coach is being asked to do. And we went from there. And it was a pretty productive season that year. I had a guy by the name of Anthony Smith, who was a high school offensive coordinator, I believe still at Bay City. First 1,000-yard back that we had in a while. I think the other guy was Kenny Gransberry, a guy that we played with, but Ant had a really productive year that year, along with the other guys, Roger Batson and my boy Brewer. Those guys I think we ended up with about 2,000 yards in the backfield that year. And the next year, I got an opportunity to move to the defensive side of the ball with a guy named John Jennings, who was the defensive coordinator at the time. He left before the season started. Chris Castillo ended up being the defensive coordinator. Being the youngest guy on the staff, I was tasked with doing everything on the defensive side, breaking down film, making the reports, drawing stuff, So it was cool. I was at my alma mater, and, guys were playing hard. That linebacker group that year was a really good group. But after that season, I decided I wanted to go home for some reason and play semi-pro football and work in the shoe store. And, I don't know, this is what I really want to do coaching-wise. And I worked in that shoe store, and I hated it.
How valuable How valuable, so I guess two lessons in this part. How valuable was coaching both sides of the ball early in your career? And then how valuable was it to actually get out of coaching, go into a corporate world or a sales role and be like, whoa, maybe this isn't for me?
Well, being on both sides of the ball to me was tremendous because, obviously I love defense, but having some offensive background, you know how teams are going to kind of attack you, and you can kind of tailor your game plans towards, that or your scheme or whatever. Like this is if we're going to line up like this and they running power, this is where we're going to be weak at. When I had younger coaches and GAs and stuff under me, my thing was always, learn as much of the other side of the ball as you can. Or if you get an opportunity at some point early on in your career to coach the other side of the ball, do that because, in the end, it's still a game of football. It's not offense or defense. It's the game of football. And the more you know about all of it, the better. But my experience of being off the field, I mean, you're 23. You're thinking that you got the world figured out. So I'm at home in a familiar space, working at a shoe store, and I was fortunate enough to have an older gentleman that I had known for a while that was like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. He kept saying that, you're not supposed to be here. But I basically was settled. And the longer that I was in that, the more that I wanted to get back into coaching. It really solidified that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to impact people this way, just working at the shoe store and being an assistant manager or whatever. That was not for me. And being in Austin, that wasn't for me. I wanted to move around and see something different. And that's when I got an opportunity to go to Kentucky Wesleyan in 2010 after being out for a year. And I really went for, working at a shoe store, being in that situation, you end up kind of taking something just because you're trying to get out, right? And this was the best situation for me. It was $2,000 a meal plan in a dorm room. And that was it. For 2 seasons, I made $4,000, but it was the most fun that I probably had in my coaching career thus far, just at a young age. Coached some really great guys. We didn't win a lot of games. Our first year, I think we won 6 games, and then after that, it kind of tailed off or whatever. But it still was a very fun time, very pivotal time. After those first 2 years, I ended up being a defensive coordinator in 2012. And I mean, just kind of the same thing. So, being off the field and working in a different avenue really made me understand that this is what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And going up to Kentucky really helped me because it got me out of the state. It allowed me to meet some new people, see some new stuff, live somewhere else. And so now I made it comfortable for myself just to move around and be around different people.
And one of the things, staying in a dorm for $2,000 a season, that's like a Rocky IV approach, right? Like it's just you and football. I mean, you don't have money to do much else.
Oh yeah, man. I was reading all kind of books, and I'm writing with Sharpies on the mirrors. I've got all these inspirational quotes, and like you said, it's just football. I didn't take my car. I just flew up there. Somebody picked me up. I walked everywhere I needed to be. I ate in the cafeteria. I read books. I just watched this and I watched that. I made some mistakes. I made some startling discoveries, you know what I'm saying? But it was what really springboarded me to this opportunity right here. And like I said, being able to be a coordinator at that age and just run your own show, have full autonomy, that was a good thing. And that kind of helped me go on and move on to Grambling because now, 4 years of, 4 more years of college coaching experience. So 6 years total, 2 years being a coordinator. It was a graduate assistant job really that's what opened up. And just because of a relationship of a guy that I knew, he asked me, to come and help him with the secondary. And I was all for it. And he was like, well, I don't know if you want to come for a GA position. I said, man, I just started grad school, trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for that. As long as I can help get my grad school paid for, I'm good to go. I figured I was going to go there for 2 semesters, be a GA, and find my way on. And 8 years later, I was still there.
So I want you to talk more about your Grambling State experience here in a second, but I think it's remarkable your sense of humility, the lack of entitlement. I think that's a big word that people use in the coaching profession now. Like, man, these kids feel entitled, feel entitled. Nothing about your story screams entitlement. You know,
Right.
that's kind of moving around, going places where you were uncomfortable and learning the game from different perspectives from people you really had no idea were even going to be there.
Right. I think early on the big thing, like just for any, when you by yourself, you want those different experiences and you want to try to maximize, all of your talents and your abilities, and you got that opportunity to kind of move around. And if you got a support group, my support group was my mother, my family, they allowed me to make that move to Kentucky, where I only made $4,000 in 2 years, they made sure everything else was taken care of. I didn't have a whole lot of bills then, but now it's a different story. I'm 37. I got 2 kids and a wife. I can't go anywhere for $4,000 now. So you got to take advantage of those opportunities when you're young. And I heard somebody at the convention one year say, "Man, stay broke as long as possible. Just go places. Have experiences, do stuff. Because once you start making that money and you start having real responsibilities, certain moves aren't going to be able to happen."
Right. You got to put yourself second. Once you start having kids and a wife and second, third, fourth, however far down. I mean, you got a dog, you're falling behind the dog most of the time.
Right. There's 4 of us, but I'm probably number 10 on the list.
I'm with you, man. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
So you're at Grambling State. You started off as a GA.
Mm-hmm.
That's a well-known program. How do you move from a GA to a full-time coach?
Man, it really it's just really one of those things. I guess our stories, all of our stories are written before we get here. If we believe in that, and I believe in that every one of my steps have been ordered. I've been placed every place, or people have been put into my life for a reason. And the guy brings me in and says, "Hey, I need you to come help me with the secondary." We were in a 3-3-5, so he had all 5 of them. And so he was the guy that was getting the GA. And for whatever reason, he called me and wanted me to come, right? Because of this relationship we established over account. Well, we'll go through the season goes, in their terms, it goes well because the year before, or the couple of years before, they had been 2-22, and program kind of been down. They had a boycott, and, a bunch of things that was talked about from different perspectives that a lot of people didn't have a lot of insight on. But we ended up going 7-5, losing in the Bayou Classic. If we would have won that game, we would have had a chance to play for the SWAC championship in that first year. So it's Christmas, around Christmas time, the holidays. That's when the carousel starts. You're just looking on Football Scoop, and boom, you see the guy that brings you in take the DB job down the street. So now all of a sudden there's nobody above you, and you just worked your tail off, I guess. And my head coach, Broderick Fobbs at the time, who was now the head coach, running backs coach at UL Monroe. It wasn't even a question, I guess, for him. I mean, because when I walked into the office, all he said was, "Are you ready?" So I guess I had just showed enough of myself that year, and just how I came in or whatever. He understood that I was going to be organized and I was going to be ready for the responsibility. And so I was, from then on, I was blessed to just be that 1 year or that one semester as a GA. And then the rest of my time, I was the DB's coach. And I spent some time working with some other guys, but most of the time, from the season of 15, 16, I had all 5 just like he did. And I had a GA. And then we split them up 17 through 21.
There's 2 lessons in there, right? Number 1, prepare. Always prepare for an opportunity you may never even know you get.
Correct.
You're always being evaluated. I think that's number 1. And then number 2, from your head coaching perspective, I think that's the absolute right way to go about it. You bring in these GAs, or you bring in people that are under your coordinators or your varsity assistants, and you're preparing them to take over those roles and for them to advance their career. So that's a really cool opportunity, and I think that's the right way to do it on both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
From how did that situation end to where you ended up in the position you are now?
Well, like I said, so, talking about the experience at Grambling, we go a stretch from really 2015 to 2017 where we don't lose a conference game, right? Things are rolling. We bringing in the recruits. It's FCS football at its finest, and we're getting guys to come, back to HBCUs at that time. There's no transfer portal. There's none of those things that's going on now. We just hitting the ground, hard, hitting the pavement hard and finding these, diamonds in the rough and getting certain guys. And, the program is exploding. And we get a couple of coaches get some opportunities and move on. We get some players that get some opportunities and move on and play in the NFL and different leagues and stuff like that. We still have a couple of players playing in the league with Chester Rogers. Playing, I think last he was with the Colts, or he started with the Colts with Tennessee Titans, and then Trent Scott is playing tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you had this incredible high, and then you kind of go, everybody else kind of catches up. We lose a Prairie View in 2017 after winning 4 in a row, and that's our first conference loss, regular season conference loss after 26 in a row. And so it's like, okay, you go back to the drawing board, it's no big deal, but you could tell everybody else has really been kind of gearing up to beat you. You've been the top dog. And so we kind of, level off, and then boom, you start having a couple of things hit. To me, the transfer portal, is really, something that when it first started, it was something that was really hurting the FCS schools, because now you get a 6'7" kid that comes from South Louisiana to come play offensive tackle for you. He starts for you for 2 years, and then the next thing you know, he's going on to a American Conference school just out the blue. You're like, okay, before that you needed people to, go and ask for a release, and you had to grant a release. Well, the portal, they just go to athletic administration office and say, I want to be in the portal, so now all of a sudden as an FCS coach, you're having to replace a roster that's turning over rapidly. Excuse or not excuse, whatever, right? So, now we're going into the season with, in the spring, we just lost 2 or 3 starters or 4 or 5 starters, right? Well, right after that is COVID. COVID hits. You're out for a year coaching in COVID or trying to monitor the kids, and COVID was a deal, right? But we made it through that. You played that season. And there was some disconnect with that season on our part. I think the conference's part somewhat, right? There was some schools that said they weren't going to play. We had one school in our conference that didn't play. And I think a lot of people was really on that. They didn't want to play, but you had presidents and, stuff like that was like, we need to play these games. And, I mean, in the end, we only ended up playing 4 games in the spring season, which was scheduled, I think, for 6. So you're getting swabbed 3 times a week just to play these games, and it was just kind of a nightmare, So obviously, you think those things aren't going to count against you, but we go into the full season of the 21 season, and you can kind of feel, maybe some tension or whatever from administration because we haven't won the conference championship since 2017, So now it's like, okay, we got to figure this thing out quick. Well, we all thought you all think that you have more time, and you don't. It's a what have you done for me lately business, right? And we hadn't won a lot lately. So we get to November of 21, getting ready to play the Bayou Classic the week before, and they call our head coach up, and they chop him that day. So now we got to get ready to play our biggest rivalry game in a week on NBC without our head coach and the interim head coach. So we're able to get it done. The kids rally around the interim. We go in, we win the game. We play good defense. We play decent. We play good offense. Win the game, and so now your future's uncertain because the interim's supposed to get an interview. You don't know when that's coming. Interim never ends up getting an interview. They go with a different guy. Kind of with what the whole league was going to with Deion at Jackson and Eddie George at Tennessee State. Everybody was looking at that time to try to pull from the NFLs at the higher levels or whatever to hopefully at that time beat Deion, because Deion came in and he did exactly what he's supposed to do. He raised the profile of the conference in a way that it hadn't been able to be raised at that point, and so now everybody is trying to make sure that they was on par with that by bringing in a guy that they thought maybe was going to help get the kids in like he was getting them in and thus beat Jackson State. So, but again, so the interim doesn't get it. They hire another dude. So now I'm just kind of in the wind. Don't really know what's going to happen. Interviewing this place, that place, phone calls, this and that. Just stressed out. The whole time my brother-in-law was like, hey, I'm about to get this job in West Texas. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, well, I got this interview over here and I got this interview over there. And he's like, okay, well, just let me know. And he just stayed in my ear the whole time. He really been in my ear for the last 3-4 years. Talking about he applying for this and applying for that. And, I'm like, I'm going to stay college as much as I can. Well, I had my last interview set up and they canceled it on me the day before the DC said the head coach had hired a dude and didn't tell him. And at that point, I was like, okay, I got to make I got to make a decision for my family. And right now, it just feels like college ain't right for me because it just seems like it's too volatile. I got a newborn and a new wife. I need something that's obviously a little bit more stable, right? So I said, okay, cool. I'm going to take this deal. And then that started my, obviously, certification process, got to get certified. I had to go take that test and do all the things I need to do in order to be a certified teacher in Texas. And long story short, get here, get that test done. I get hired by the district. I get here in April. Family moves out in May. And we've been sitting right here ever since.
You mentioned your brother-in-law. Is your brother-in-law the head coach?
My brother-in-law is the head coach, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that's cool. How cool is that? I mean, that's got to be kind of cool and kind of not cool at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's really cool, just period. I mean, you're moving in the coaching profession, and so most of the time it's either you or it's you and your family. Well, we move with our family. My sister is right down the street. I can go 4 doors down, hook a right, and I'm at her house. Then we moved out here. When we got out here, my wife was talking to her cousin because she knew that he lived out here too. It turns out he's actually 4 doors down on the same street. So that kind of unsure feeling that you might have when you move, and it kind of went out the window initially because you knew that you was going to have, at least some help, somebody that you was going to know, but at least until you met other people in the area, So it's been pretty cool. I mean, obviously the conversations, can get heated, because he's an offensive guy and I'm a defensive guy. And, I might not agree with, man, why did y'all go for it? And he like, well, why did you bring that blitz? But it's all been good though, man.
Yeah, I bet. Just going from such a in the college game, just instability and, as you said, volatile, to moving to a place where it seems like you got a pretty good support system set up and a good environment.
No doubt.
Who helped you early in your career as far as a mentor, and what they teach you? How'd you benefit from that relationship? You mentioned really 3 specific spots along the way, and the one you're at now is 4.
Well, obviously the head coaches, really, or a big one, because each one of them brought something different to the table. You know, Dennis Parker at Texas Lutheran was one of the first people to really just kind of like, man, that first year he rode me and just kind of rode me, you know. And at the end of the year, he was always that person, or at least with me, he was that person that, you know, he would coach the coaches, but then he would come back and love on you. You know, I remember there was a kid that I had at TLU that I was just working with relentlessly to just teach him the nuances of blocking that fullback and just being more physical. Coach Parker just was riding me about that kid all year. And at the end of the year, I get into my locker and there's a note from him saying how well of a job I did all year preparing that kid, that kid most likely was not a fullback, but because of the work that I did with him, he was prepared game in and game out. You know, and that was big for me. You know, he was a very organized individual, you know, and he just ran his ship a certain way. When I got to Kentucky Wesleyan, you know, Coach Brent Hosklau was a, you know, guy that had played there, had been coaching there for a while. He was a real fun-loving guy, family guy. And his deal was like nothing was going to come before the family. Like, we're not about to be in here all day. I got kids to go pick up and a wife to be with. So get your work done and go home, you know. And so that was big for me there. And then when I get to Grambling with Broderick Foss, probably one of the most organized individuals that I've ever been with. You know, he had a plan for a plan for a plan. And that's kind of helped me with just my coordinating stuff because, you know, he had practice plans. He had rainy day plans. He had, you know, this is how we going to do this, our itinerary for this and that or whatever. And it's obvious that he has sat down and taken notes from everybody that he's coming you know, contact with. But, I mean, he also played for the great Eddie Robinson. So, you know, he saw it be done the right way at a young age. And then his father, Coach Lee Foss, was our running back coaching from 14 to 17. And Coach Lee Foss coached at Alabama, Coach Sean Alexander at Alabama, coached at A&M, was the head coach of North Carolina A&T. So it was just so many people, you know, in Coach Favre's life that imparted wisdom into him that, you know, those were things I was able to take. And then outside of that, you know, when I got to Grambling, I met Terrence Graves. He was our linebackers coach at the time. He's at Southern University now. And me and him just kind of clicked up from day one. And he was a guy that, you know, I just saw a lot of myself in, or maybe he saw a lot of himself in me, is why we clicked up. And he just kind of took me on as like a younger brother and just made sure that, you know, I knew how things go in the SWAC. I knew how we was going to work and how things needed to be there, and just made sure I was always on point.
Those are three valuable lessons. TLU, accountability. Kentucky Wesleyan, spend time with your family. That's your first team. And then Grambling State, excellent organization and preparation.
Yep.
That's what I heard. Is that accurate?
Yep. That's totally accurate.
What has been the most gratifying moment in your coaching career?
It's really moments, you know. I mean, we won been on championship teams. I didn't lift a finger, right? In 2016, we won the Black College National Championship, beat North Carolina Central in Atlanta. And I just had a group of guys that was go-getters. You know, as Coach Foss used to say, I was coaching from a bucket. I ain't had to do too much coaching because those guys just, you know, they came in and they just listened and they just, everything that I said, they hung on. They just flew around, right? And so you would think those are the most gratifying moments of winning championships. But to me, it's when I see those guys afterwards. You know, those guys are now, you know, Eric Rose is a guy that was GA for me at Grambling that ended up coming back and being our corners coach and coaching with me. But he played for me at Kentucky Wesleyan and was my GA, you know, at Grambling. Like I said, and then went off, was a DC, D2 DC, came back and worked with us, and now he's gone back out in the world. He's a defensive coordinator. But the most important part about it is he's a husband and he's a father. So to see this guy that played for me at one school come be a GA for me, graduate, get his degree, get married, be a father, but get a chance to be a coordinator, that's gratifying. Just to see the guys, that played for you, that are now married and fathers and, high school coaches, especially when they was playing, you didn't think they would do anything like what we're doing. This is crazy. You're going to be around other people's kids all day. You're going to be chasing other people's kids, right? These guys ain't going to want to be coaches. And the first thing they do when they go do something little bitty, and then boom, they right there in somebody's school affecting lives just like you did. That's, to me, is the most gratifying part of this, is just seeing those guys that come after you put back in to other people's kids.
There's nothing better, and it's kind of a sign of the times that we're getting older, man, but there's nothing better than watching kids you coach become coaches.
Right.
You alluded to it a little bit earlier. I want you to go into a little bit more in depth, and maybe from the personal side of it. What's been the most difficult struggle for you in your time coaching?
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, man, you don't ever expect to, you hear it, but you don't ever expect to get fired. You hope to beat the act, so they say, maybe get an opportunity to move around or whatever. But, we was just, myself was just on a love affair, at the time. You just felt like, we could do everything that we need to do there. We was going to get the help that we needed to get there. And that whatever was wrong there, we was going to be able to fix it. But you just don't have that much time in today's age. I mean, Coach Robinson coached at Grambling, over 50 years. Coach Paterno at Penn State and Coach Bowden at Florida State. You're just not going to have that anymore with the TV and the internet and, the way everything just moves now. You're not going to have anybody stay somewhere, for long periods of time unless you're Saban. But how did Saban do that? He's doing that because he's winning, right? If he wasn't winning, I guarantee you they're going to be, so that was tough. But the thing that made, being fired probably the hardest thing was, like I said, I had a newborn. Had a newborn 2 months after, it was all said and done at Grambling. So now you don't know how. You got a little bit of money because you got severance and this and that or whatever, your contract and all that, but you don't know what the next step is. But in the midst of all of this, he was in the NICU for 10 days, so now me and my wife, my new wife, right, we trying to figure out, okay, what's wrong with our child? Is there going to be any real issues while also not having a job? So that was just tough. It was I know a tough time for me, a tough time for my wife, just kind of watching, me just kind of go through the, picking up the phone, answering the phone, calling this person, talking to that person, trying to, see who knows somebody over here and knows somebody on this staff, and can you call this person for me? And it was just a tough time because in the end, man, it only matters who the head coach knows or who the head coach wants, right? There was, a couple of them places, I knew 3, 4, 5, 6 dudes on the staff, and didn't end up on the staff, because in the end, it's who that guy wants, no matter how bad you want it, no matter how bad you think you fit, it's who that guy wants. So, that was a tough time because you're questioning, okay, well, I've done this for 8 years here, and this is my resume. 35 under 35, back-to-back SWAC championships, all of Black College All-Americans, all conference players. Why ain't I the, odds-on favorite? You know what I'm saying? And so you kind of question yourself, and, it was just kind of one of those things. Like I said, I think that it was the most difficult time because of what I was going through, what we was going through with our son. And seeing my wife kind of react to what I was going through.
Absolutely. I've been through something similar, and it's something that now, kind of looking back at it, I'm glad I went through because I can have some empathy for other people that have gone through it. Before it happened to me, everything was a promotion. There was no uh, there was no sort of rough patch or time where you really had to question, like, is this what I need to do now that I have kids and I have a family? You kind of, I think everybody, you mentioned it earlier when we were talking about selling shoes. I think everybody has a period where they think like, maybe I should do something else. Maybe that stability would be better or a better challenge. And I think the real coaches, people are born meant to coach, they stick with it and they find a way and they land on their feet and people take care of you when you least expect it.
Right.
So I want to go back to Grambling, and I know it wasn't the greatest exit for you and it was a difficult time, but just the SWAC, the history, the tradition, the pageantry. What are your best memories from your time there? And I know you mentioned a couple championships. And anything else you want to talk about the SWAC or HBCUs that maybe somebody like myself or our listeners should be aware of because you're you have an inside perspective.
Right. Well, don't get me wrong. That last, 2-3 months of that deal, that was rough. But my Grambling experience was spectacular. You go somewhere like that, and the misnomer in the coaching profession is, quite frankly, you're a black coach, right? If you go to HBCU, you're gonna get labeled an HBCU coach. And I had a bunch of my buddies from other schools would ask me, what's the difference? HBCU ball than, other ball. And I'm, I've been a big proponent of saying, to me, it's tough. There wasn't, in 8 years, there wasn't one time that we saw a pocket pass. It wasn't one time that we prepared for a pocket pass. Almost everybody had a dual threat guy. So defensively, you had to make sure that your scheme, that your plan was right. You had to make sure that, you took away this guy's, good things and made him do all the bad things right. But then once you did that, though, you had to make sure that you planned for, the other skill players. Now, maybe the line players a little different, but those guys were athletes, though. You look at dude that played for the Saints for a long time, Teron Armstead. He played at Arkansas Pine Bluff, and he goes to the combine at 6'4", to 300-something pounds and runs a 4.6 40. So at the time that I entered the SWAC, it was a bunch of guys that, again, like there was no portal. The transfer rules were different. So you had a bunch of guys that was kind of under the radar that really could have been at some of these bigger schools and playing these bigger schools, but they was in our conference. Maybe because they either didn't have the grades coming out and they had to go to a junior college and they just kind of got lost in the shuffle, or they were undersized in high school and they blossomed into this player and nobody wanted to take a chance on them, or they just was undersized, period. We played a guy at Southern by the name of Willie Quinn that broke every Southern Baton Rouge records, right, in receiving. And we knew that going into every game, you can't kick to this dude. You have to identify him in the formation everywhere he goes because they're going to move him around. So just the ball-wise, it to me, it was highly intense, competitive, right? You had to be on point every week because, somebody could beat you at any point because they just had dudes. The guys were organized. Like I said, I get there and, Coach Fobbs and his organization and, my defensive coordinator at the time, Everett Todd, was another guy that extremely organized, right? So that all kind of fit into it. But, outside of just what we were doing and where we was playing, just the atmospheres. The thing that, like I said, Dion was able to kind of, shed a light on Jackson, but if that whole conference could, just get the light, if we could do something to just, show outside of ESPN Plus. Like I remember growing up, BET used to play HBCU games from all levels. D1 games, SWAC games, MEAC games, CIAA games, SIAC games, right? That's the D2 conferences. And so you got a chance to learn about those schools, but I think personal opinion, before Deion came in, I thought our schools kind of got put on the back burner because we don't want to give them that much publicity. Because it's something special when you can go somewhere where you feel comfortable in your skin and you know that, people ain't questioning why you there. I probably never told you this, but one of the first questions I was asked when I got to Texas Lutheran was, what sport do you play? And I was like, why I got to play a sport? And they was like, why else would you be here? And so that always stuck with me. Like, but I had a blast at Texas Lutheran. And I think, certain people can handle that. Everybody can't handle it. Every 18-year-old kid can't handle that. And so being able to go to a place like Grambling or Southern or Norfolk State or, FAMU, right, where you kind of a little bit more familiar with the surroundings or whatever, I think kind of helps in your maturity, but it's just kind of their culture, our culture, and it comes out on game day, on Saturdays with the bands and the dance teams and the cheerleaders and the experiences. It's so many classics. You got the Magic City Classic between Alabama State and Alabama A&M, and they'll put routinely 50,000 people in there. The Bayou Classic on NBC Thanksgiving weekend every year. I think the last year we played, I think we had 65,000 in there in 2021. And there was two teams that wasn't going to the SWAC championship, just playing for the rights to call themselves King of Louisiana. Coach Rob back in the day started, they really the pioneers of HBCU football when that was all that we could do and places that we could play at. They made it to where it was, kind of like Negro League baseball. It was travel ball, and Coach Rob was big on saying, you have team, we'll come play. Grambling has played games in Japan. They played this year. They're going back to New York. Grambling used to play in New York every year. In Miami, when I was there, we played classics and obviously New Orleans in the Superdome. We played in the Chicago Classic against Clark Atlanta at the Bear Stadium at Soldier Field. We've just played in some iconic stadiums, and I just think sometimes that's not, obviously it's not highlighted because people would rather obviously, Alabama and Ole Miss and Texas, that gets more, publicity than the black colleges. But the thing that I would say to anybody is, it's good ball there too. And that those kids are deserving of their support as well. And, I think before this, we was talking about what could people do to help, right? I just think as an alum, and I ended up getting my master's from Grambling, so I just think as we got to be more so we got to start with our own schools, and we got to demand, that we do the right thing by our kids on campus, right? Because obviously there's been some issues at some schools, and the HBCUs get it. They get all the news when it's something bad, But these things happen on all kind of campuses, right? But we do have to do a better job, really, not just at HBCUs, but all campuses of protecting our kids, right? Nobody should be afraid of anything or shouldn't be afraid of homecoming or anything like that because it's going to be extra people on campus and we don't know what's going to happen, security, just on college campuses got to be better. But I think HBCUs, we got to make sure that we protect our kids, and we protect our kids by making sure that we have the right people in place on campus to protect our kids, whether it be security-wise, whether it be administration-wise, whether it be just the people teaching, right? And then as much as we can, we need to, give back as much as we can. And when we do give back, that money needs to go to the right spots. I know Ed Reed was in the news a lot for the way he handled stuff at Bethune-Cookman. I'm not certain that's not the way to handle it. I knew that last head coach there, and I'm sure that every last one of us at every university, college, high school in the country have issues, right? But I don't know if you publicly go out anywhere and just kind of handle it the way that he handled it, which he came back and apologized for that. But that to me is something that you got to work on in-house, and you just got to make sure it gets done. You just got to make sure it gets done. Nobody should be in subpar living conditions or anything like that. But we also, and I don't believe it's in Bethune-Cookman's deal, but we also got to realize that a lot of these HBCUs have been funded by the PWIs that they're in that system. And some of the reason why some of the HBCUs have been, their situations have been worse off than their PWI counterpart is because they might not been getting that money that they were promised or should have been allotted to them over the years. I mean, Prairie View built a new facility a couple of years ago because they had won a lawsuit versus Texas A&M for the money that they hadn't been getting. Tennessee State in Nashville is supposed to be getting a lump sum money from the state of Tennessee or whatever. And so, for years, those monies were not made readily available to the HBCUs. And so they weren't able to upgrade their facilities and stuff like that like other schools were at that time.
I think the information you're giving right now on HBCUs is incredibly valuable. I have never needed to know anything about HBCUs other than they were playing on NBC, and this one particular game against these two teams was really kind of my connection to the football programs there until this past year. So this past year, I have a good friend whose daughter's a senior, and she's looking at going to Howard. And it kind of surprised him that she wanted to go to a HBCU. At the same time, I have a junior quarterback that's a scholarship quarterback. He's a college quarterback. He's probably not a Power 5 quarterback. And his parents asking about HBCUs or me inquiring about HBCUs to send this kid, right, and put him in the best situation possible. He's not an NFL player,
right?
But he's a college quarterback, and he needs an education, a good education. So having both of those come at me at the same time, I wanted to know more and more about, what's the value from an academic standpoint, and I think you hit on it. Just the comfort level.
Right.
Anything else you want to add to that before we go on to the next thing, or is that kind of it?
Man, like I said, man, my experience was awesome. And it ain't all just about the bands. I know we played a couple of games and people was like, "Oh, I heard y'all got a good band."
Y'all got a great band.
Yeah, we got a good football team too. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of history there, man. And whatever we can do to support, it ain't just the HBCU deal, man. I'm about just supporting our kids, no matter what color they are, being able to get a safe, comfortable education, that they will enjoy, that when it's all said and done, they have memories. I recruited a kicker from Fort Bend, Travis. His name is Garrett Urban. He just finished playing there. White guy, right? Mama's name is Becky. Daddy's name Taylor, right? They didn't know anything about Grambling State University until I walked in there and talked to him. He was, came at it full steam ahead. I think he probably got more out of it than shit any of us did. Shoot. You know what I'm saying? So I know he just enjoyed it, and in the end, it just was an education. Yeah, it came from a HBCU, but I think he's more of a Grambling person than some of the rest of them because he just really enjoyed the experience. He felt protected. He got an opportunity to play ball on the Division I level, make some kicks, win some games, and he got a 1.5 degrees out of it. I think he'll be finishing up his master's here soon. So
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Preparing for life.
It's just getting kids opportunities, and it doesn't, it shouldn't matter, where they go. High school coaches. The one thing that I will say that I appreciate that Dion was able to go is now that Dion was able to do is that now high school coaches won't turn their nose up to HBCU coaches that come in the building. I know that, because I know, I got teammates out there. I know you guys never did that, but I know there were some guys that when I came in the building, we don't have nobody that could play for y'all. And I'm like, but then a year later, I'll be talking to the kid that they didn't want to send me, that now he's trying to transfer there because, he wants that experience. He want to go to the Classic. He wants to, play in the SWAC championship. He wants to play on TV. And I'm like, well, what happened to that little no-name directional FCS school that you went to that averages, that's probably something that people don't talk about. The SWAC has led FCS as a conference in attendance, probably for the better part of the last decade. And Jackson State is one of them that, they get a win, lose, or draw. They could have 3 wins, they could have 13 wins. They're gonna put 50,000 in their stadium in Jackson, Mississippi. So that's the one thing about it. When you go to HBCU and you play ball, people gonna come out and support and watch you. And you're gonna get a chance to play in front of. If you're not gonna play at Bama in front of 100,000, you're gonna get a chance to play in front of 60,000 at Grambling.
You've been a defense coordinator at college level and now in your current position. What is the biggest difference in preparation or time management between the two?
Oh, man. So, college, you in there. You're not doing anything else. So you kind of get a chance to spend all day. Your week is set up a certain way. You play a game on Saturday. On Sunday, you want to get that game out the way, and you've kind of already started your preparation for planning for your other team. So you might have a little intro of that team that evening with the team or whatever you might do on Sundays. And Monday is normally a day off. And then you get into your Tuesdays and you got your scripts and your openers and this and that. And then Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, you either traveling or you just getting ready for a home game. High school, all this stuff's out the window. Everybody teaches something else. Everybody's got a different 10 other things they got to do, and so when I got here, I really had to realize, okay, some of this stuff we got to scale back. We do scouting report, but it's not as extensive as it was, in college because, in the end, you just don't have that time. I mean, my D-line coach is probably – hopefully he's back now, but he was just in Cyprus at the state wrestling tournament. And so the last month of the season, he was doing morning practices for wrestling and then coming to do afternoon practices for us as we was making, trying to get into the playoffs and play 2 rounds deep, So, and then my linebacker coach soccer, and then my corners coach, because I coached the safeties, my corners coach, the day after we lost in the playoffs, he was at a basketball game. Coaching basketball, so it's going nonstop, and so everybody's got a million responsibilities in high school, and so you figure out what's important, and you just work on that, and you make sure that's we get good at that, the kids get good at that. These are the things that we need to focus on. These are the things that we need to hammer into the kids, and you just kind of go from there. In college, you get more of an opportunity to kind of You got a couple of periods. I can run this coverage this period and see what it looks like in Skelly. And then I can come back and run it a couple of times in team. And by the end of the week, you got maybe 20 or 25 times that you ran and then you feel comfortable with it. In high school, I'm like on Monday, if we ain't going to run it today, I'm not running it on Friday. Because it just ain't, the kids, they going home too. You don't have a whole bunch of meeting time with them, so it's just like you don't want to put more on the kids than what they can do at this level. So you want to give yourself a chance to win. So you get good at something and then you do little variations off of that.
Absolutely. And I'm the same way on offense.
Yeah.
You believe in something, you have some core principles, some core schemes.
Right.
And some variations off of it, but less is more, and let's be confident in what we do. The old Bruce Lee, fear the man that's practiced 10,000 kicks, not the man that's got 10,000 different variations of a kick.
Because with what we do here, we got a wealth of stuff that we can pull from, coming from, what we did at Grambling for the last 8 years, and then what I did in the previous. At Kentucky Western, we got a wealth of stuff that we can pull from. And I went in with this big old Excel spreadsheet of install, and we got to, when he said, hey, we're going to go offense, defense going to go first, and then we're going to switch kids, and offense going to go second. I like, hold on, so I don't got 35 minutes, or I don't have 7 periods of defense. It was like, nah. I was like, okay, well, let me slash this. What can these kids do? They're gonna run around and chase each other, so let's play man.
I've been really happy with my current head coach, and I worked with him before I went to Pearland. But when I came back, one of the things I learned at Pearland, like my call sheet can fit in the size of your hand. Like I got to be able to put it in my pocket. And I came back. And I gave it. I was like, this is what we're doing. And he kind of looked at it. I was like, yeah, so you can put it in your pocket. And he's like, oh, okay. And then left it alone.
Yeah.
So, I'd much rather do that than have a whole bunch of crap and then you have an injury and somebody comes in like out of position. They don't know what to do. Like, oh, my God, over that.
I got this big sheet, but it's all pretty much the same stuff. And some of it probably could be taken off because some of it's just pictures. Some of it is just blank formations that because now it's laminated, I just take a Sharpie and I draw on it a play that I think or a formation that I think is the most important that we need to talk about right now. And then I just have that for later or whatever. But it's most of everything on there is a variation. And then what we're doing defensively is I'm really kind of talking to each kid anyway. So as long as they know what a backer call is and what a backer switch or whatever we doing, as long as everybody knows what that is, they don't have to know, well, in this situation, if I'm just calling a regular defense, they don't have to know, well, I got to line up in a 3 this time or versus no. If I call your name, you coming off the edge. So if I say tight Don, you coming off the tight side edge. And we just kind of go from there, but no, I'm with you though. I mean, it's a lot of more stuff I can put on there, but defensively you kind of got to be a little bit more prepared, I believe, just from my side on offense because we're reactive. So I got to know, okay, in these last couple of games, like I said, that's why my call sheet is big. The kids don't see it. Well, my middle linebacker this year, I would show it to him just so he kind of, because he was doing a good job. And so I started showing him, this. And so he started thinking in my terms of, okay, well, second and long, coach want to bring some pressure. And these are the pressures that he feels comfortable with. But you got to know what that person is going to do based off of what they've been putting on film, and you got to have some variations. And like I said, because of what we do, I really don't have to practice every single one of them, because it's just changing a word, and they all know what the base word is: backer switch, um, text, whatever it may be.
I got you. All right, so we're going to go to the 4th and 4 scenario, and you're our first defensive guy. So if I
Yep.
screw this up or if you need more information, let me know, because it's been all offensive guys up to this point.
You got it.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Coach. I'm an 11 personnel team.
Mm-hmm.
My go-to players on offense are my tight end and my slot receiver. My quarterback is a dual threat. I'm close to 50-50 run pass on normal down and distance, but I'm 100% of the time. My tendency is to pass or speed option on 4th and 4 to 4th and 7. We're on the right. My right, your left hash. We're 2x2. My tight end is flexed at 5 yards on the line of scrimmage to the boundary. My wideouts are between the numbers and the sideline. My slot is just outside the hash of the field. I'm in shotgun. My back is offset to the boundary. What's your thought process? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to win the game?
Okay, so first I got to figure out which guy I really want to take away. I mean, it's tough when you got two guys, but, with you putting your tight end on the ball, it kind of tells me, one or two things. Your tight end's on the ball and your receivers split out between the numbers and the sideline hash. So he's only going to run an end cut, whether it's a shallow drag or a hitch. Your tight end's on the ball, so he's most likely going to be the guy that's going vertical, and you got to back that side, so you might be trying to flood our zones with that. I mean, we got 4 yards to get, maybe running a corner with a hitch and a flare at the back or something like that into the boundary. But if it's just something, if I can get this personnel on the field, I'll probably just go a nickel situation. And we had a coverage that we played at Grambling once before where if there was a guy that we just really wanted to take away, we would take him away with our nickel. We play man with him on nickel, with the nickel. So I take your slot away to the field because that's the most grass, right? We just throw the ball out there and just get him in space. Boom, he falls, he gets 5 yards, right? So take him away, play man on him with the nickel. Then we could play a cover 2 shell with everybody else. Now, how does that help me? If you decide you want to run speed option into the boundary, if I taught and trained my corners up properly, the minute they see run, they trigger. So now they the pitch guy, right? So they the pitch guy. And then if I can either stun or whatever, my front or whatever, my end and maybe my 3 or however I set it, if I could just kind of slow the quarterback and just make him slow it down a little bit, now that gives me time for my corner to get there in the run game. Now in the pass game, how it helps, so if you're going to run your corner, what we call spot, if you're going to run your corner hitch and your flare, right, I got my corner playing.
Which is exactly the formation I'm set up in. I'm set in for that spot route or for the speed option to the boundary.
Right.
You're doing a good job.
So now my corner can sit in between those two. I got a high safety on that deal, right? And since you're in 2x2, now I can kind of cheat the middle of the field maybe with my middle backer. So now those safeties can get off of that hash, but also because I took away that slot man to man. So now that corner really to the field, right? You're probably not going to that guy, but he's playing a flat guy as well. But most of the threats are into the boundary. So now I can kind of bring that field side safety into it, allow that boundary safety to kind of play inside leverage of that corner route, the corner play in between, and just make you throw the ball down. I got a linebacker there, so we got a outside triangle on those 3, make you throw the ball down. Pray that we recognize it, and the quarterback wants to get it out quick, and we can rally down because he sees too high. He sees a high safety, so he says, okay, the corner route's not there. Let me throw to this hitch, and we rally down and tackle it real fast.
Man, that's an outstanding answer. And the 2 things I was thinking, right, to set you up. Like either it's going to be speed option to the boundary, or we're going to run some kind of snag concept, try to high low corner, something along those lines. You hit on both of them.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, man. This was a blast.
Sir.
I don't get to talk to you too much, man. I follow you a lot on social media, but it was good talking to you, and I look forward to doing it again. Tell the listeners how to find you on social media.
Man, my Twitter is @Coach_Ware, and it's just real simple, man. I've been same handle since Texas Luther.
Thanks again, man. You can find me on Twitter @CoachLawrenceFB, as in football. Search 4th and 4 Podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. Remember to check out our sponsor at the Etsy store. Use promo code podcast at checkout.